Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of Zay's Experience. Today we're going to be making steak. I'm going to show you the way I cook it, and I'm going to be showing you guys some tips that will take your steak to the next level. So without further ado guys, let's go ahead and start cooking the steak. So we're gonna start off with our steak, guys. But first, before we do anything, I want you guys to go ahead and turn on that pan that you're gonna use. I recommend using something with a very heavy bottom. That way, the heat starts to distribute more equally all around and cooks the meat more evenly. Always preheat your pan before you start cooking. A lot of the times, people go ahead and throw in the meat right at the same time as they turn on the pan, and that just is a recipe for failure. Don't do it, guys, trust me. So tip number one, go ahead and preheat your pan at a very high heat, in particular for just cooking steak. You want it as high as possible, or high, medium, high, but err on the side of high. Now tip number two, guys, you guys see me talk about it before, but as always, if you're going to be using one of those, put that little rag at the bottom. Makes this not move around. So that's tip number two. Tip number three. Make sure, guys, if you're gonna cook a steak, you want this to be sitting at room temperature for at least 20 minutes. Otherwise, the meat's gonna cook out perfectly on the outside, but it's gonna be tough and cold on the inside, so it's not gonna cook evenly throughout. So tip number three is leave it outside for at least 20 minutes prior to cooking. Tip number four. This is something that you guys might have not seen, but if you have, props. Use a couple of napkins and pat it down. Yes, pat down your meat. The reason why we do this is we want to get as much moisture. You see all that? To get as much moisture as we can out of the meat. That way, when we put it into the pan, the meat doesn't look like it's boiled. Otherwise, with all the water and all the excess water in the meat, it's gonna look like it starts getting boiled down, as opposed to like a seared piece of meat. So once you patted that down and gotten as much out of the water out with the napkin, the next tip is gonna be season your steak properly. You don't know how many times people under-season their meat because they're afraid that that they might over-season the meat. The salt that you pour in on top of this is in charge of seasoning the entire piece of steak, so you better make sure you get enough of it all around. So be very generous with it. A little bit of salt, pepper. Turn it around. Same thing. Nice. So as we wait for our pan to heat up, guys, what we're gonna need to do is we're gonna let that rest for about 2 to 3 minutes while the pan's heating up. That way we let the salt extract as much of the moisture out as it can. This is gonna help out a lot in the cooking process. So trust me, let it sit for about 2 to 3 minutes while your pan's heating up. So now that our pan's preheated, guys, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a little bit of olive oil, and that's the next tip. We're gonna go ahead and just make sure you cover the entire bottom of the pan properly with your lubricant. This is gonna help out the cooking process quite a bit, guys. So now we're gonna go ahead and put the meat inside. If you don't hear that sound, take the meat right out. It just means it's not ready. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cook for a minute on each side, and we're gonna be turning it around every minute. So we literally can go ahead and do this with a stopwatch. So every minute I'm going to be turning it around, and we're going to cook it for about 4 minutes. So it's going to be a total of 2 minutes on each side, and then we're going to go ahead and add some of the stuff that we got over on the side. right when it hits 4, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it once again, and I'm gonna put the garlic on top, along with a couple of these rosemary sticks. And at 30 seconds right after, I'm gonna go ahead and add that piece of butter, small piece of butter in, and that's just gonna take your steak to a whole different level. Let's turn this guy around one more time. Now let's just baste this guy with the juices. And at minute 6, we take it out. So now there's two very important things that we need to do, guys. Once we take the meat out, we're gonna let it rest for as long as we cooked it. So you guys know that rule. You've heard me talk about it many times. So we cooked this for about 6 minutes. We're gonna leave it to rest for 6 minutes. And what that's gonna do is gonna let the meat keep on cooking, and it's gonna release all the juices, and it's gonna make it much more tender. As you can see, it already started releasing all these juices. This is not blood. A lot of people get freaked out and they confuse this with blood. This is not blood. This is just the juice of the meat itself, guys. So don't confuse it for blood. Trust me, that little liquid is gold. So once we let this meat rest for those 6 minutes, now we're gonna go ahead and cut it up. That looks awesome, guys. So now what we're gonna go ahead and do is, final tip, always cut against the grain at an angle. Let's see how that ended up. Look at that, guys. Now we're just gonna pour over some of those juices that were left over on the plate. Trust me, guys, if you've never done this, if you've always thrown away those juices, go ahead and pour them over. It's gonna make a huge difference. And we are done, guys. Actually, no, we are not done. As good cooks, guys, you always gotta try out your food. Nice. That I can eat every day for the rest of my life and be perfectly fine with. So there you go, guys. Another quick recipe for you guys. If you guys like this video, you know the deal. Go ahead, comment, like, and subscribe. Tell others about it. And also, make sure you go ahead and get this down. Master this technique down. You'll be able to pull it off at any meeting, at any house gathering, and trust me, you are gonna be the star of that day. So that has been all on my part, guys. Thanks for watching this episode, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.